couple of buddies and myself decided it would be fun to see if we could fly around the United States in 22 hours. After many changes and a few wrinkles along the way, nobody expected this trip to end up the way it did. Stay tuned to find out what shenanigans we got ourselves into. Our first leg of this trip starts us at Washington's Dulles International Airport. I had never flown out of Dulles going into this trip, so I was already pretty excited. Here's the 22-year-old 777-200ER that will take us across the country to Los Angeles International Airport. This specific airframe was delivered to United in 2001 and is one of only 4 777-200ERs in United's fleet that is configured for domestic flights. First class in this plane actually has rear-facing seats and is configured in a 2-4-2 configuration. As we were walking through the terminal, we saw the unfortunate state of 2 Boeing 737 MAX 9s that were slated to undergo inspections. In addition to the 32 first-class seats, this beast of an airplane comes with 124 in Economy Plus, which has sections in the front of the economy cabin and more rows towards the back. It also has 206 regular economy seats, which is where I was going to be for this 5-hour and 55-minute flight to Los Angeles. My friend Ryan and I were lucky enough to get seats 31 and 32A, which were window seats with a view of this massive wing. My other friend, who was tagging along, Freddie, paid to upgrade to Economy Plus for the extra legroom and spectacular views. Our original plan for a departing flight was actually supposed to be a 737 MAX 9 going from Baltimore to Los Angeles, but since the issues, United was kind enough to waive any cancellation or change fees for those affected. As soon as we saw the 777 itinerary on the United booking site, we knew we had to at least try to get on it. As we taxied out of Dulles, we didn't know what was yet to come. All we knew is that we were grateful to be on time and headed towards sunny Los Angeles. After blasting out of the nation's capital, it was time to sit back and relax in the skies for the next 5.5 hours or so. This was the longest flight that I had ever been on, and also my first time on a wide body, so to say that this was something I was eager to experience was an understatement. During climb, the crew told us that Wi-Fi was available for purchase. Unfortunately, after our flight leader tried rebooting the system twice, it never did work. This was obviously unfortunate for people like myself that wanted to get some work done while they were on the plane. However, I was more than content to enjoy United's selection of in-flight entertainment options. Their seatback IFE is now being incorporated to all of their mainline aircraft, and lucky enough for us, all of their domestic 777s have already been retrofitted with the new seats. Also available to us on the flight was United's app. I know that doesn't sound like much, but the game center is where I spent more time than I would like to admit. Their flight simulator game is surprisingly realistic for a mobile app that's main purpose is to let travelers book and check in for their trips. I also purchased the takeoff snack box, as unfortunately meals were not offered for this flight. Inside of it was a sour cherry jelly, cream crackers, Italian breadsticks, cheese dip, salami slices, a stroopwafel, almonds, and a Toblerone bar. As we were cruising over the Midwest, I tried my best to keep the window shade up, but the sun was not in an ideal spot. I was able to have it up for most of the flight and could see that the entire country was covered in snow. However, the only thing I could really think about during this flight is when we were going to get to LA and if we had time to make it to the Delta Sky Club. The descent into Los Angeles was incredibly scenic. The Sierra Nevadas were capped with snow, but the land below them was obviously mild-tempered. This was my first time visiting the West Coast, so my mouth was agape with awe as we started to turn into LAX. As a Rams fan, I was greeted with the anticipation of seeing SoFi Stadium for the first time, but unfortunately, I was on the wrong side of the plane. Lucky for me, Fred was able to get some nice pictures and videos. Also unfortunate for us is the fact that after we touched down in LA, we had to wait on the ground. Our gate was occupied by a United 787-10 that was headed to Tokyo. We had enough time to make our connecting flight up to Portland, but the chances of making it to the Delta Sky Club with enough time to do anything were relatively slim. So we waited, and waited, and waited, and finally, after 50 minutes on the ground in LA, we got off the plane. We got the chance to deboard through door 1L, which means I was able to get a look up close at first class. These seats can also convert into a lie-flat bed if you desire to use them in that way. The setup for first class in these domestic 777s almost reminds me of a train car with rear-facing seats. Alright, we just spent 50 minutes on the ground, sitting waiting for our gate. I now officially hate anyone going to Tokyo. But we are beelining it, trying to get to the Delta Sky Club. This is the best one from what I hear. So we have to walk from Terminal 7 to Terminal 2. We board in, give or take 45 minutes. So we'll see. We'll see what happens. So first experience on United was pretty good. Seatback IFE was awesome. There was no Wi-Fi on the flight. That kind of stunk. I was gonna do some things, work, money moving around, stuff like that on the flight. It didn't work out that way. There was no Wi-Fi. It is what it is. That's not to the fault of United. It just happens. Very nice crew, very clean cabin, no complaints whatsoever. Next ride's a Delta A319. Hoping to get some good wing views up to Portland. It's supposed to be snowing in Portland, so we might get a little delayed. Hope not. Minimal delays in Portland, but we're good. On this nearly 30-minute walk from Terminal 7 to Terminal 3, we took in the sights and sounds of LA the best that we could. It is unfortunate that LAX doesn't have an easier way to get in between terminals. Even the people movers that were at Dulles would have been better than this walk. As we found ourselves getting closer to boarding for Portland, we were mulling even going to the Sky Club. Fortunately, we decided for it and were treated to fantastic views and even better food. This is one of the newest Delta Sky Clubs in the US, and it shows. The area was clean and modern, and the weather just made this experience better. Being able to watch ramp operations was awesome, and you can even see downtown LA from here. Absolutely exquisite experience at the Delta Sky Club here at LAX. We do have to put a little pep in our step to get to the gate now. Head to Portland. 16 and wing view for Nolan. Very excited. The views were great. Boarding our flight to Portland was a breeze. By the time we got to the gate, they had already called Main Cabin 1 to board. We didn't even stop walking. We scanned our boarding passes, and we were headed off to a very cold and snowy Portland. All right, we're now on board the A319 that's going to take us up to Portland. Excited about this one. Last time I was on a 319 was an American special livery, the America West Retrojet. We'll see what this has in store for me. Back on Delta. The aircraft diversity at LAX is one to be jealous of. As you can see, I caught this Korean Air A380 on approach after a lengthy flight in from Seoul. Shortly before this one, I saw a Lufthansa Boeing 747-8. So as of right now, we need to keep an eye on the weather in Portland. It's not looking too good. A lot of snow. Average delay time of 39 minutes on departure, 4 minutes on arrival. So we'll get there. It's just a matter of how long are we going to be there. Portland's our tightest connection, so we'll get there, which is good. And then we have a 4-hour layover in Salt Lake where we plan on visiting a Sky Club there as well. But right now we're looking really good on time. Haven't had an issue yet. Hoping to continue to not have an issue. As quickly as we had landed in LA, we were off to Portland on board the Baby Bus. This airframe was registered as N335NB, a 22-year-old Airbus A319, but from the inside you never would have guessed. They for sure know how to take care of their older airframes. On Delta's A319s, they have 12 first-class seats in a 2-2 configuration. Rows 10 through 12 are configured in 3-3 and have Economy Plus seats. And there are 102 Economy seats. Economy Plus offers the same seat width, but 3 extra inches of legroom. For someone as short as me, I didn't mind being in economy and found this flight quite comfortable. Snacks and drinks were offered on this 2.5-hour flight, and I opted for water and, of course, the Delta Biscoff cookies. Unfortunately, on this flight, I was also facing right towards the sun. However, the people next to me didn't seem to mind, so the window shade was up. During the booking of this trip, we had envisioned a scenic flight up the west coast, showcasing mountains and the Pacific coastline. I don't know why the weather really hated us today, but it did. The entire flight consisted of one massive system of clouds prohibiting us from seeing even the tiniest glimpse of the ground. As we neared Portland, we could see some snow poke through, a stark contrast to the sunny skies of Southern California. However, we geared up for an on-time arrival into the chilly climate of the Pacific Northwest. After 2.5 hours, 2 pick sixes thrown by Joe Flacco, and some bumps on the descent, we hit the ground in Portland. We had to wait about 10 minutes after pulling into the gate because the jetway had ice and snow on it. The first time I've heard that. As we began deboarding, I went straight for the cockpit. I had ulterior motives. I had heard rumors that Delta pilots carried airplane trading cards, and I was able to obtain 2 from our flight crew. Shortly after getting into the terminal, all 3 of us got a notification on our phones telling us that our next flight to Salt Lake was going to be delayed by about 40 minutes. No sweat yet, though. We had almost 3.5 hours for our connecting red-eye back to Baltimore. The only thing that was going to prevent us from getting there tonight was a disaster. After the A319 that had occupied our gate pushed back, our ride for this next trip pulled in. This 9-year-old 737-900ER, registered N826DN, was going to take us on the hour and 14-minute journey from Portland to Salt Lake City. Delta has 4 different 737-900 configurations. We were on a 737-932. Delta has put 20 first-class seats in this plane, still in a 2-2 configuration. Fred was lucky enough to get an upgrade thanks to his Delta status to first class for this leg as well. Comfort Plus has 21 seats in a 3-3 configuration, but row 10 only has 3 seats on the left side of the aircraft. Economy is also in a 3-3 configuration, with 139 seats stretching from row 14 to 37. I was in 24F for this flight, yet another wing view. Boarding for this flight started about 20 minutes later than the Delta app had said. It was already added to our 40-minute delay. However, we were doing just fine on time due to the big cushion that we had built into our itinerary. I was looking forward to getting to Salt Lake with some time to spend in the Delta Sky Club and relax before our last flight of the day, a red-eye back to Baltimore. Slightly delayed in Portland. Getting on the plane now. We are about an hour, 10 minutes after we were supposed to be. Cuts down our time in the lounge a little bit at Salt Lake, but that's okay. Just really hoping they have the mac and cheese that LA had. 739 for this leg. Back on a Boeing. I feel safer again. Pilots on the Airbus were really cool. They gave us trading cards, so that was cool. I got an A321 and an A330, and we flew on an A319. So, hey, it is what it is. All right, we're gonna head out now. Here we are, second to last flight of the day. Great wing view over here, by the way. You can't see it, but it's a great wing view. Some nice snowy, dark shots out of Portland, Salt Lake City. Snowing in Salt Lake City currently, but we have our longest layover yet to come. So, not really sweating that at all. Having a good time. Spirits are high. Scheduled in Baltimore, 5:27 a.m. Everything looks on time out of Salt Lake on the A220. I did get Comfort Plus on that. We're at 24F here on a 739 ER. So, plugged exits a few rows behind me. And that Alaska plane is still on the ground here in Portland at some point at this airport. It's not snowing in Portland right now. It is snowing in Salt Lake right now, so we are going to have to figure that out. But yeah, 739. Excited. First time on a 739. Also, shout out to the Delta ground ops here in Portland. They did a great job turning this plane around real quick for us to get on after the A319 that was leaving for LA had to get de-iced. It took them a long time. The flight was delayed. There was another flight to LA. Actually, our plane that came in from LA, the outbound back to LA got canceled. And a whole bunch of people got rebooked to this flight, actually, to Salt Lake to connect through other cities. So great job to the Delta ground crew, all the staff here in Portland did a great job handling it. Hats off to them.
Thanks for your assistance. Welcome aboard.
We were on the ground in Portland for a while, and I mean a while. After the first hour, we started coming up with doomsday scenarios about what to do if we missed our connection. By hour 2, it became apparent that we probably wouldn't make it. The issue was, as the pilot described, unique. The airport only had one fueler working, and when Delta called, the fueling company didn't even pick up the phone. The pilot didn't have an estimate on when we would be able to be refueled. The fuelers finally showed up, but they couldn't find the valve in the ground because it was covered in snow. Finally, they got to work. After we had been fueled, we needed to wait to be de-iced. Portland also only had 2 de-icing crews working that night, and it took almost 30 minutes from when they started de-icing us to when we finally pushed back. Vibes that were just hours ago at an all-time high had come crashing down like nobody had ever seen before. I didn't even record departure on this flight. I was so concerned about finding a way to get back home after we made it to Salt Lake City. Finally, after 3 hours of delays, we touched down in Salt Lake City. The most frustrating thing about this entire situation was that our departing flight to Baltimore actually pushed back from the gate 2 minutes early. We even passed it as we were taxiing to our gate. It was upsetting knowing that if we had 15 minutes less of delays, we would have been on that flight. Well, good news, bad news. Good news is, we're in Salt Lake. Bad news is, missed a connection to BWI. And now, we have to go to the help desk. Good news, we're on a flight. Bad news, leaves tomorrow. We're gonna get a hotel, post up here in Salt Lake City for the night. Land of Mormons, who've never been here before, I have been to Utah, went to Four Corners one time, but shout out to the lady who worked real hard at the Delta customer service desk. She was much appreciated in getting us to go on to DC tomorrow, and most exciting of all, A321neo. So let's do it. As we made our way through the airport and outside, we decided the first hotel shuttle bus that we saw would be the first one we went to. It was a Comfort Inn bus, and let me tell you, it was absolutely refreshing to sleep in a real bed and rest up for tomorrow. The next morning, we awoke at 6 a.m. to get to the airport for our scheduled 9:45 departure. We wanted to spend some time in the Delta Sky Club at Salt Lake since we didn't get to do that last night. Again, one of the newer sky clubs like in LA. The entire terminal at Salt Lake is brand new, and I will say it is by far the cleanest and sleekest airport I've ever been in. The views from the inside and the outside of the Sky Club were fantastic. Similarly to LA, there was a fantastic view of the ramp, which makes it perfect for plane spotters and aviation enthusiasts like ourselves. Since Ryan and I had been rebooked on this flight last night, we decided we would press our luck, getting seat assignments at the gate before we boarded. I didn't want to wait because I saw an empty window seat on the Delta app, and I asked one of the employees at the Delta Lounge if she could secure it for me. Sure enough, she was able to. She even got Ryan an aisle seat and an exit row. The Delta employees at Salt Lake were hit or miss. Last night, a woman came around saying that if they were from the Portland flight, Delta wouldn't comp our hotel stay, and started having unprofessional tones with some of the customers. However, the employee that rebooked us onto today's flight and the employee at the Sky Club were absolutely fantastic. A huge thank you to them. Good morning from a very brisk and blustery Salt Lake City, Utah. Currently, I am on the sky deck of the Delta Sky Club here in Salt Lake, and this is one of two Delta Sky Clubs that have a sky deck, LA, which we were in yesterday, and Salt Lake right here. Good news is we were able to get rebooked into DC on an A321neo, and I finagled my way into a window seat this morning with the lady at the front desk of the Sky Club. So that's good. I was scared I was going to be stuck in the middle. The scenery here is absolutely fantastic, and sitting right in front of me is a Boeing 767-300ER that just got in from Honolulu. I cannot wait to get on this A321neo. Boarding starts at about an hour and a half, so we're going to mosey on down here. But this Delta Sky Club, man, this is fantastic. I mean, I had the best waffles I've ever had. Getting some really good coffee, which is much needed after only 5 hours of sleep last night. And the views are immaculate. This is one of the more scenic airports I've been to. And it's a really new airport. The terminals here are all new, and they're still building the concourse that's directly across from me right now. So I think that this is one of, if not, besides BWI, my favorite airport that I've ever been in. It's clean, security was a breeze, the TSA guy made a joke towards me. It was just an overall great experience. So hats off to you, Salt Lake. We didn't want to spend the night here, but at this point, all things considered, I don't think we're really complaining about it. So Fred just informed us that he got upgraded to first class on the 321neo. There was a red eye to Miami that I was thinking about taking, doing Miami to Atlanta to Baltimore. But when I asked the gate agent when we got off in Salt Lake, she said that there were no flights, no seats on the Miami to Atlanta leg that I wanted to connect through on. So she booked us on Salt Lake to DC, non-stop. Completely okay with that. I just really wanted to get home last night. But Delta gave us a $600 hotel credit that we were able to use and spend the night here in Salt Lake, and we got 5 hours of sleep, so it's better than nothing. Man, I'm just standing here like this. Look at these views behind me. I should be standing like this. I mean, come on now. Look at those mountains over there. Fred got booked on a red-eye to Atlanta on standby, and since they couldn't guarantee that he would have a seat, they actually went ahead and gave him a hotel credit that we were able to use as well. So, Delta, could have handled the situation a little better. Obviously, the delay is not their fault. And everybody who's working customer service here in Salt Lake did a fantastic job. Even in Portland, They were doing a fantastic job. The Delta employees, the Portland Airport employees, that's a whole different story. But the Delta employees have been nothing but fantastic and helpful this entire trip, and it would not have been possible without them. So a huge hats off to everybody who works customer service anywhere, but especially an airline at an airport where you have winter weather, because in the winter, it can get really, really crazy. So thanks to everybody who works for Delta in Portland and in Salt Lake. Begrudgingly had to leave the Delta Sky Club in Salt Lake. We gotta go board now. Almost home. We're getting there. If you guys wonder what plane nerds do when we're at the airport, we look at toy planes. All right, that's N512DE, the one-year-old A321neo. Is going to be taking us all the way back to the nation's capital to finish up this trip around the country. Flight radar says we're delayed by like 20 minutes. Take that with a grain of salt for now. We'll see what happens when we get on board. The good news is, plane's here, weather's relatively clear. Looks like we should be good to go. 32F for the way back to DC. 321neo, first class seats, look pristine. Shout out to Delta for that one. One-year-old plane. This is a great wind view. We're gonna have a good flight. Getting to DC around 3:30, which is about 12 hours later than our original flight would have gotten into Baltimore. So, God, what a last few days we've had, huh? All right, we'll see you for departure. Also, last time I checked, app on the phone, middle seat was open. Again, this would be 2 flights in a row where the middle seat's open. Hoping, fingers are crossed, that doesn't change. We'll see. The middle seat in my row did stay empty for the duration of the flight. You could tell this airplane was brand new. The first class seats looked spacious and comfortable, and Fred was lucky enough to end up in the front row. The in-flight entertainment system on this flight was different, and you could tell it was newer. Not only did it have fleet information on the entire fleet of Delta's aircraft, but the flight tracking map went way more in depth than the ones in our other flights. You could also look at maps of some of Delta's biggest hub airports, which is really helpful if you're unfamiliar with the airport that you're arriving into. There was no map of DCA, but luckily, I had been flying in and out of there for a long time, so I didn't need much help navigating. The views out of my window for taxi were stunning. We taxied past the cargo and Delta maintenance ramp with a wonderful view of some snowy mountains in the background. But if you think this view is scenic, just wait until we get up in the air. As we continued towards the runway for takeoff, I was alleviated to get to go home, but I also was sad as I realized this would be our last departure of the trip. There's something special about the feeling when takeoff thrust is engaged and you get pushed back into your seat that you don't get from anything else. This was by far the most scenic flight of the trip. I think at this point, all three of us were almost glad that we had missed our flight last night. If we hadn't, we would have been extremely tired and probably grumpy the next day rather than fresh and rested. We even got the chance to shower at the hotel. Also, between the Sky Club, the views, the comfort of this new airplane, everything really just seemed to work out for us. It was a very comfortable flight, and I hate to admit it because I'm a Boeing guy after all. Delta's A321neos are some of the newest, sleekest planes in the sky. There wasn't one part of this flight that I didn't enjoy. They come equipped with 20 domestic first-class seats arranged in a 2-2 configuration. They also have new headrests in their first-class seats that give customers a little bit more privacy. If you want to know more about this seat and what this flight was like in first class, go check out Fred's video on our adventure. I will link his channel in the description. There are 42 Comfort Plus seats in this airplane, from rows 10 to 17, and 132 economy seats. Both are arranged in a 3-3 configuration. The seat was very comfortable, and the tray table was big enough for my iPad, phone, Coke, and Biscoff cookies all at the same time. This A321neo gets an A+ rating from me. It was by far the most enjoyable flight on this trip. All of our crews so far had been great, but there was something about this Salt Lake City-based crew. They seemed genuinely happy to serve us and get us anything that we needed to make us more comfortable. One of my favorite parts about this flight was the meal options. First class had the option of sausage or French toast, and Fred opted for the latter. Anyone else could purchase a snack box or fruit and cheese tray for $10. Considering that's what I spent on my United snack box, I wouldn't have had a problem spending that money, although breakfast at the Sky Club had already filled me up. Before I knew it, we had started our descent into DC. Time flew by as I spent some time finishing up some work, but mostly my eyes were still glued to the window. Unfortunately, there was a lot of glare from the sun, so I kept the shade halfway down. Morning snowstorms in DC brought in a windy afternoon. When we departed Salt Lake, they were landing on the river visual. By the time we got there, winds had shifted, so we landed on runway 1. As we kept getting lower, I looked at my flight tracker and realized we were right on top of Dulles. It was crazy to think that just a little bit over 24 hours ago, we were boarding our first flight of the trip. It felt like days. I realized that we had spent months and months anticipating this trip. I got really sad thinking about how it would be over in a matter of minutes. As we continued to get closer, it allowed me to look towards my home, the entire country, further away than I had ever been. And here we were, just over 36 hours after we left, right back where we started. Air travel is special, and I never take it for granted when I get to experience it. This approach felt like a roller coaster ride. There were a few times where I thought we might even go around. This was some of the hardest I'd ever held onto my phone while pointing it out the window for the entire trip. Hats off to the pilots for handling this so well. As we pulled into the gate, I could only think about how much fun I had up in the skies. I already yearned to do something like this again, and even though it didn't go like we had planned, it worked out, and we would all do it again as quickly as the opportunity came up. A huge thank you to all the United and Delta staff that made this trip as enjoyable as it was. You guys are the real heroes. Also, a huge thank you to everyone that watched this video the entire way through. You are all awesome. I'll see you again the next time the skies call my name.